Hello, and welcome to another fully live Wednesday Q&A episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinzie. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today we have our special guest, or special recurring guest, Angelina, on to talk about some cool resources she's put together for aerospace hacking. Angelina, thank you for being on the show again.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Kody.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we got to catch up last week. Yeah, last week and talk about hacking. We also tried to fly a drone and got shut down almost immediately by a circling LAPD helicopter, but it was really fun. And you have been involved in aerospace hacking and all that sort of thing for a good amount of time now, seeing as you are a pilot and you're interested in how that sort of thing works. For anybody who's maybe not seen you before in the stream, you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you're interested in?
Yeah. So, hi everybody. I'm Angelina. If you don't know me, I'm interested in aerospace hacking and pretty much cybersecurity research related to anything that flies. So, I've been doing a lot of reverse engineering research with drones lately. I've done a lot of development in regards to satellites and pretty much anything that's in space. I want to be able to find vulnerabilities in order to protect, because that's where humanity is headed within the next century or so, which is really exciting. And I really want to help develop programs that spearhead new innovations within space.
Yes, and of course, if people want to find out more about that, they can also check out your class at Null Space Labs, which is coming up pretty soon, actually, right?
Kody, I think you're cutting out.
Uh-oh. Well, I was hopefully not for everyone. Please let us know if there is some audio issues on our end. But yeah, I was just mentioning you have a class at Null Space Labs coming up pretty soon, right?
Oh, sorry. Sound input error on my end.
No worries, no worries. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So if anybody has a question, obviously this is our Q&A stream. So Angelina has some stuff to show off today, but also we are going to take questions. One of them, of course, is more of a statement. Drones is the newest topic. Seems really great. And yeah, honestly, anytime we've debuted this kind of stuff, people have really enjoyed it. So it's pretty cool that this is your area of focus. So do you want to go ahead and get started with what you wanted to show off?
Of course. So recently I developed a new website for you guys all to check out. Let me share my screen. So when I first got involved within aerospace cybersecurity research, I found it really hard to find resources, especially when I was first beginning. It was really difficult for me to find a bunch of resources, especially online programs and tutorials and blogs on the internet to learn more about aerospace hacking, because it's a really niche field, and most of the technology that was being developed that was space related and also cybersecurity related was not very tailored towards beginners. There was a huge barrier to entry to understanding the technology that was underlying the systems and frameworks that were running those technologies. So I wanted to really make it more beginner friendly and accessible. So I created this online resource. That's a website. It's tools.g4lxy.space. It's my hacking alias is Galaxy. So I just created a website called galaxy.space, and you can visit the website here and click tools, or you could just go directly to this link right here. And essentially, it's just a collection of various different aerospace hacking tools that I wish I had when I first began research and development in the field. So you can see we have lots of different resources listed here. This is just the beginning. I actually want this to be a more community-centered project. These are a brief list of programs I've used in the past that I found helpful, but there's thousands of programs out there in order to help research in this field. Yeah, and pretty much anybody can contribute. It's a GitHub. There's a GitHub repository that has all the underlying data from this. So if you want to contribute to this project, you can just visit the GitHub repository and submit a pull request. And you can see there's also some like interesting tools here. We have things ranging from simulators of aircraft, like the ISS docking simulator. We have satellite data processing software, rocket flight simulators, and you can like facet the information here. So let's say I want to learn more about satellites. I click satellites and you can see a list of satellite cybersecurity tools. You can go, we have like lots of different tools. We have digital forensics, drones, spacecraft, you name it.
That's super cool. That's super cool. So what would be your tool of choice, or maybe two, for a beginner who has never touched this before but wants to play with something related to space or related to aerospace, and just wants to get a good beginner experience?
That's a good question. I would say anything. It depends on if you have programming experience or not. If you do have programming experience in a simple scripting language like Python, playing around with libraries like Skyfield, I would say, is really useful, because all you do is it's like a plug and play API kind of thing, and you can calculate different telemetry and data values within space, and do a lot of like mathematical computations with libraries like this, and it's all open source, like I mentioned.
Wow, that's super cool. So if you don't have programming experience, then what would you say?
Yeah, I think I would start off with a simulator. I think it's the funnest way to get started. So, for example, SpaceX has this International Space Station docking simulator, and this is actually what real life like astronauts use within missions. So this is the SpaceX Dragon 2. I had a lot of fun. I don't know how this works. But essentially you can just like play around with various systems. So let's say I begin, and yeah, it's like a video game pretty much. And you're trying to like dock the Dragon 2 onto the International Space Station.
That sounds hard.
It is hard. I have not figured out how this game works yet.
Like
it's very annoying.
Astronaut.
Oh, pardon, can you say that again?
Oh, I said once you do figure it out, then you're basically an astronaut.
Yeah, pretty much. This is astronaut training.
So one person's saying they're having a hard time finding the site. What was the URL again?
Yeah, it's tools.g4lxy.space.
Let's see. Cool. I'm gonna make sure I typed it correctly, and then I'll drop it in the chat.
Yeah.
How do you spell your alias again? G4
LXY.
LXY. I added like an A for some reason. Okay, this works, and I will drop it in the chat. I'm sure someone else made the same mistake. Okay, cool. Here we go. All right, so here's a question that you would. We've got two questions actually that you might have some insight on. One of them is, I wonder how they secure the International Space Station. Is that something you've ever been curious about or looked into?
That's interesting. I've looked into satellites, but not specifically the International Space Station. I'm sure they have like avionics protocols in place in order to secure it. But it does depend on what sort of attack you're trying to run. Because there's different like protocols and systems in place on something as robust as the International Space Station.
All right, so here's a much closer to Earth question.
Okay.
What would allow, I guess, valid tracking and triangulating of a UAV location in flight during travel from source to destination waypoints if the flight is autonomous and from point A to B? It's pretty specific. What are you planning, sir?
Okay, that was a lot of information.
Yeah.
I heard triangulation of location. So Okay, there's a couple of things you can do to track down a drone's flight, where it's been in the air or within airspaces. There's a couple of options right off the bat. You can use something a little bit more complicated, like radio and signals intelligence, or something more simpler, which is what I would do in like a digital forensics scenario, would be to either consult some kind of like ADSB system for drones. So there's a couple of resources out there. I think it was Skyflight or something very similar, and they provide it's kind of like an ADSB kind of output, but specifically for a drone. So you can track down where a drone has been within an airspace, its altitude, its location. Or you could, if you do have access to the drone, if it's been downed or crashed into something, you could extract information from the SD card and then look through the various different file formats. So you could look through the MP4 files. You can look through the images the drones have taken and then run a metadata analysis on it. So you can run EXIF on the image formats within the drone and try to find out where the location the location was at that specific timestamp in the drone's flight, and various other telemetry data. You can also look through more complicated files like SRT files, which is essentially just metadata of video recordings the drone has taken, and then look into that as well. I'm actually developing a drone forensics tool that does this specifically. So I'll let you know once that tool is out, and hopefully maybe you can use that to help whatever shenanigans.
Yeah, so also the advice on this is going to be highly configuration and mission specific. So if you have like if you have a commercial drone that has a drone ADSB turned on and it's running all default, all stock basically, there's a number of different ways to, you know, like relatively easily like figure out where it's going. It's broadcasting information, like you can get its control signal, and the operator is watching the footage live. So like you have like telemetry going between the operator and the drone. So you have all sorts of signals kicking off that are possible to track. Now, if you're talking about like a modified, like hand-built drone that is operating purely on GPS and isn't sending any signals, that's going to be pretty hard to track. It's operating basically in receiver mode only, where it's getting GPS coordinates, but it's not sending telemetry anywhere. A drone that's configured to do this, that's just doing like an A to B route, would indeed be pretty hard to detect because, you know, like it's not sending any signals that are easy to track. So again, highly specific when it comes to the configuration and what the mission would be. An off-the-shelf drone, super easy to track in a number of different ways. However, like a drone that is, you know, like a hand-built drone that isn't sending out signals that are going to allow for easy triangulation, like it's going to be hard to track that just in general. Unless it crashes, then you can probably extract the waypoints and figure out, you know, where it came from and where it's going. Let's see. Here's a question. What is the name of the acronym ASB? Can you provide the correct form, please? ADSB, or is that? What?
Yeah, ADSB, Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast. So essentially, it's like a radar system for planes. I'm sure, I don't remember the specific acronym for the drone-specific ADSB, but the concept is still the same. It provides information about aircraft in various different locations.
And James is saying that his friend bought a Kraken RF for triangulating signals. So yeah, like anything that's putting out signals, control signals, whatever else, that can be triangulated if there's enough distance between the receivers and they're able to calculate the time of flight or like other information that'll give a good indication of how far away something is. So yeah, anything that's going to be sending and receiving signals is going to be vulnerable to triangulation. Only something that was running completely dark and only receiving. There actually is some kind of cool and interesting technology around this. Like we talked about assisted GPS before, and how like sometimes phones will use Wi-Fi and cell signals and stuff like that to try to figure out where they are. Drones can actually do the same thing. Like I believe that there was this program that was designed to be robust even if GPS was being jammed, that just looks for known Wi-Fi signals on the ground and cell towers and stuff like that, and figures out its location by that. So there are ways of navigating even in areas where GPS might not be working so well, or you can't send out any signals. The problem is, like, you obviously just can't send any telemetry back to whoever's operating the drone. So there are definitely some trade-offs there, but really interesting question. Slightly suspicious question, but whatever, do whatever you're going to do. So here's a question about kind of cool and interesting technology. Have you done any stuff with LoRa?
Ooh, not yet. But I do have some stuff in mind. I'm thinking of like doing some more because I've heard of like a lot of really interesting projects, especially hardware related projects that have been done with LoRa. And I've looked into some satellite related LoRa hardware projects in the past, but the problem is not a lot of that stuff really isn't open source, so you have to like try to play around and figure it out yourself, especially if it's like satellite related. But yeah, that's something I'm definitely looking into.
I just also want to thank the person who quoted my standard disclaimer, which is do whatever you're gonna do, whatever. Yeah, like I can't control what you guys are gonna do with this information. Just know that you might get in trouble if you're insufficiently sneaky or insufficiently legal. All right, so in regards to LoRa, I do want to like just mention for anybody who's asking like who our friend Laura is and why we're also excited to do projects with her. LoRa is a type of technology that allows you to have a pretty remarkable range, but generally send like very small amounts of data. So the trade-off here is like you're not going to have a security camera that's using LoRa to send live video back and forth. Like LoRa like can't do that. It's the protocol is designed for very long range, like IoT devices exchanging like very short messages to each other. But there's a number of different things that would be useful for. Like Angelina, do you remember anything about like the frequency or the like why like LoRa has such improved range over like Wi-Fi and some of these other connection technologies? Because I don't, I forget.
I haven't quite looked into it yet.
Yeah, the crux of it is like while you don't get the same connectivity that you do from like a Wi-Fi link or even a Bluetooth link, you do get extreme range. So a lot of these like e-bikes or like rental scooters and stuff like that, like they'll use this protocol sometimes to communicate just like their location over GPS and like their battery level or something like that as like a low energy way of doing this. Now in areas with better infrastructure, they'll often just use the cellular network, but LoRa is an alternative for a lot of these different projects. And you tend to find like temperature sensors, fire sensors, like things like that. Like I've seen forestry projects using LoRa to like put fire sensors or smoke sensors like out in the middle of nowhere and then have like a single sensor, like up somewhere collecting that information from lots like a large area around it. So that's kind of the application for it, is like IoT sensors or other things that are reporting back small amounts of data a couple times a day or like relatively infrequently. So super cool technology. It's also dropped in price. I have to say, since I first started getting interested in LoRa, that was like probably 5 years ago. And the price then was just like kind of prohibitive. But now I'm seeing boards that are like $5-10 that are LoRa enabled, and it kind of makes me want to try it. So if anybody in the chat has any excellent LoRa-based projects, please let us know. I really want to find some good beginner ones and try a couple things and show it off for anybody who hasn't tried it yet. Okay, another person says there are Linux drones. Had no idea. I mean, I think 2 DEF CONs, maybe 3 DEF CONs ago, I got sold a badge that flipped out little like propellers and was a drone. so yeah, if you can make a badge drone, I'm sure you could make a Linux computer into a drone too. In fact, I bet it's probably a pretty effective drone. Angelina, do you know anything about like Linux-based software for like drones? Because I imagine there's a lot of like free like controller software that's available.
Yeah, I've looked into. I think like Ubuntu like has a website like specific for drone-related applications, or I looked into it like a few months ago. But yeah, there's definitely like resources out there you can use to make your own Linux-based drone.
That's pretty cool. I remember also back in the day there was a Sticky Fingers Kali Linux like build that like was specifically designed to be on a drone, and it looked super cool. I don't think it was running the drone. I think it was just like a payload. But ever since I saw that, that was a White Dome, I believe was the project, like the person who did that project. it's I don't know, I always got like my mind turning, and I think I developed a couple of payloads that were just using Raspberry Pi Zero W as like a little like electronic warfare platform. And of course the ultimate one was like Sammy Kamkar's version that would allow you to use like the Pi Zero W to de-authenticate another drone from its control network, assume control over it, and then fly it away. That's, I think, my favorite use of Linux on a drone so far. And James is saying somebody recommended he look into commercial LoRa gateways being sold aftermarket. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Those are like the back end of the LoRa systems that like obviously let everything talk to each other. I don't know how expensive they are. I don't know how much it is. I'm just very interested in technology, and I want to try it out for like long range applications, especially because it's very low energy too. That's the other thing about LoRa. We like very low energy. All right, so here's a networking question. Let's see how this goes. I recently set up a network attached storage on my Pi, but I wonder if my ISP can access my local communication. Any thoughts?
I think, Kody, this is a question for you.
Yeah, so an internet service provider will generally, so it depends, would be my answer. If they gave you the router, probably yes. And the reason being, I believe that the internet service provider can push like whatever updates they want to the router, including configuration changes. So if they decide to change your configuration to allow, like this sort of access, then there's really nothing preventing them from doing that. You wouldn't, as far as I know, even get a notification. Now, if you bought your router and it's just plugged in, and you have like different, like different stuff set up, different like DNS, and like you do your own updates and stuff, then probably no. Like depending on the way your firewall is configured, like that shouldn't be possible. So I guess my like sticking point is like, did they give you the router, or did you buy and set up your own router that you like maintain? I don't think they should be able to access your, I mean, then again, I failed one networking class. So and I feel very smart. So take that with a grain of salt. People with more networking experience will be able to tell you, but from my limited knowledge, the only thing that would allow them to do that is the fact they own the router and they can change the settings however and whenever they want. If that's not the case, then probably not, but somebody else can jump in the chat and let me know if I'm wrong on this one. Oh yes, they gave you the router. Yeah, no, they can probably change some stuff if they want to. No, they shouldn't be doing this. Obviously, it's your internal network. Like that shouldn't be open to scrutiny. But like, for diagnostic purposes and whatever else, that router can really report any data that they feel is necessary for it to report back. So let's say you stop, having your DNS settings like pointing to their thing. Like, okay, that's fine. But if the router is collecting reports and sending it back about networking devices and like traffic and whatever else, then like, like that metadata could still be potentially very useful to somebody who wanted to snoop around your private network. So again, a little bit of like trade-off there. I very smartly got my router off of actually from Goodwill, and I just updated it, slapped it in there. So I'm sure everything's fine. It runs very hot. But aside from that, yeah, I would just recommend getting your own router and setting it up yourself if you want to make sure that your internet service provider can't arbitrarily change settings and push updates. Yes, you do have your DNS settings set to the Pi hole. Is that helpful? Yeah. So, I mean, so one thing that I find very funny is like, if you just get your internet service provider's router, they automatically set the DNS to their DNS, and every website that you attempt to resolve, and basically anything you type in the address bar and hit enter will go to them, and they will see it and they will be able to sell it. And there is nothing wrong with that as far as our laws are concerned. That data is up for grabs. So every website you go to, like all that stuff can be tied to you individually and then sold as a package, which gets added to whatever big data bubble about you is out there, and marketed and resold and whatnot. So if you don't want that easy free data flowing to your internet service provider, yes, use something like a Pi-hole or use some other source of DNS, because I really don't like the way that like personal internet service providers will take your data and then just sell it. I think it's sketchy and weird. So like, you don't need to be, you don't need to be crazy to the point that you have a VPN over everything. And for example, my work hates that, and I have to reset my password every time I log in with like a sketchy like commercial VPN. They hate it. So I can't use the VPN all the time. I just change my DNS settings so that I'm not sending absolutely everything to the service provider. It's pretty easy. All right, more questions. For Angelina, here we go. I was wondering, and I feel like I already know the answer to this question, if you have any plans to publish any guides, tutorials, or any other forms of educational content on the subject, which is DJI/satellite/drone hacking.
Yeah, I have a lot of plans to release content for everything aerospace hacking related. I've done a little bit of research in the past that I've posted on sites like Hacker Noon or Medium. You can check them out. I have like a blog you can check out that hosts some of the resources I posted. But I'm trying to get more into like video related content related to aerospace hacking. I've been doing collaborations with companies such as like Hack9 and Pentest Magazine, and I have a couple of video content courses in the works currently for drone-related cybersecurity stuff, as well as satellite hacking as well. And I have a video in the works currently that talks about ADSB hacking with drones that will possibly be released soon. I think on Redia. I think Kody and I worked on it together a few months ago, and we postponed it a little bit, but I think most of the software for it is done, and once it's complete, I'll be able to release it. So yeah, a lot of projects in the works currently.
That's awesome. And of course, I have to shout this out. Let me share my screen and make sure I'm sharing the right one. That your hacking class is coming up. So if people want to support you in person and show up, it is a paid class, but I think it's super worth it. And the tickets are almost sold out. So if you're going to be in the Southern California area, oh my gosh, Angela, this is coming up so soon. That's great. Tickets are not sold out yet, but I think we already have like 12, 15 people, and it's only going to be like 20 something people that are going to be able to fit. So if you want to check out this class, it's going to be super cool. You need to bring literally a computer with Python 3 installed, which is not very many, requirements here. So definitely check it out if you're in Southern California. If you're going to be mad about this, be mad at me. I told Angelina, maybe don't try streaming this one and just focus on the class and like make sure that everything goes well. I find streaming in like a public hackerspace to be like very difficult and frustrating, and I actually will not personally be at that class because I'm going to be required elsewhere. However, like definitely check out this class. It's going to be super fun, and if you don't get to see it this time, we will try to stream it another time. So yeah. Sorry, yes, immediately somebody asked if the class was streamed. I know. I just like, frankly, it's Angelina's first class, like doing it by herself. I don't want to stress her out, and my team isn't going to be available there to do filming. So we want to make sure it's a good experience for everyone. But this class will rise again. Do not worry. We'll figure something out because I know it is a goal. Let's see. All right. So yes, the class is currently in person, but you know what? If there's enough interest, we can definitely do an online class that's like, way cheaper and like has you guys following along and being able to ask questions and stuff. Like I kind of didn't really consider doing a digital version of the class, but frankly, Angelina, if you're interested, I mean, there's several people in the chat who like seem like they would like that. Maybe we could do a repeat of the class that's just a streamed version, and maybe do it a couple days later, or even, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll see how the in-person class goes, and if it goes all smoothly, I'll definitely consider doing an online version of the class as well.
Yeah, cool. All right. So I am also going to be doing a class coming up soon, and I wanted to get some feedback from the audience on what types of things you think are good for beginners who are just getting into cybersecurity. So we're going to be doing a cyber camp in the next 2 weeks. And this is going to be featuring both Raspberry Pis, USB nuggets, Wi-Fi nuggets, and a very cool soldering board called the Meow Mixer, which Angelina designed. And we're going to be using Raspberry Pis for most of this, but I want to get some feedback from other people in the audience about what has been a good way of getting someone who's a beginner, maybe like a student or somebody who hasn't tried this sort of thing before, to really feel comfortable like trying out something new with cybersecurity or with ethical hacking. So one of the things that we're focusing on is the soldering and Meow Mixer boards, but also programming, USB scripting, Python basics, Circuit Python, and then also talking about ethics. We don't want anybody at our camp to get arrested. But all these things are, of course, important when you're getting someone who has no experience with hacking, kind of their first taste of what the industry is like. So if you have any Raspberry Pi based projects, or if you have anything that you think is really great for beginners, now I'm planning on teaching some Wi-Fi hacking stuff, and I'm planning on teaching some of the easy tools in Kali Linux just to get a feel for it. But yeah, I've found myself looking for other things I might have missed, because another contribution I really like is that Gandalf.ai, like large language model CTF, where you get to try to trick this thing into revealing information that it's not supposed to reveal. It's probably my favorite little twist that we've put on this. And of course, that can be done in a browser. But seeing as we're doing a lot of this with like Chromebooks and stuff, it's interesting to see what other people have come up with. So if you have any shout outs for interesting and cool beginner projects that use a Raspberry Pi or like a basic Linux computer, I'm all ears, because I think we've done a pretty good job, but I feel like the community might have some gems out there, and I don't want to get all the way up to the camp without at least asking if somebody has like a favorite thing that might end up being the best part of the camp. So that's pretty much it. Just asking if anybody knows of anything that they really like. I've found that there's a lot of cool projects out there, and I've tried to focus on like simple, like Python or like Wi-Fi ones, but I'm sure there's some other cool ones out there too. Let's see. Oh, and somebody wants to get censored. There we go. And also added to the blacklist of Restream chat. Cool. So here's a question. Does Angelina go to DEF CON?
Yeah. I do have plans to go to DEF CON this year. I'll be working alongside Kody. I think at the Hacker Warehouse booth. So yeah, if you want to catch me there, talk about aerospace hacking, anything you want, I'll be willing to talk to anybody that shows up and is willing to talk about cool stuff.
Yeah, and I'm hopeful that we'll also be able to do some stuff with the IoT Hacking Village. It's kind of still up in the air, but if we're able to do any workshops or anything like that, then stay tuned and we will announce it as it comes up. I'm hoping, though, that we can do like a couple like quick workshops like in that village just to be able to interact with people and show off some of the things we've been working on. So yeah, I will announce it as it comes up. But yes, Angelina will be going to DEF CON, as will I and a bunch of other people from our crew that you've probably seen on Nullbyte, Hack5, or Security Forward videos. All right, so here's a question about books. What kind of books should someone read for hacking or kind of related books for a beginner? I don't read a lot of books, so Angelina, I might need to rely on you on this one.
Yeah, I don't read a lot of books either, but I know people that do read books. There's a friend of mine who's also into cybersecurity. He reads a lot of like manual-based books. So books that have, like, let's say like you want to learn Python, you would refer to like, I think it was like Black Hat something, but you would go to that manual, and then the way he learned Python was he would go for the book and then read through the different scripts and examples, and then like put a spin on that and then make your own program based off of what you learned from the book. I personally don't use books either, but I think they can also be a great resource. Whenever I do use a book, I use like an ebook, because it makes like reading through code a little bit easier. And if I want to like run through a program that's shown as an example in the book, I can just copy paste it rather than like having to type it and then refer to the paper and then having to type it. But yeah, like I think it really depends on the way you learn. Some people are like really visual and they need like something tangible in front of them to learn. Other people just need like an ebook online. Or if you're like me, you can what I used to learn is I just go for like a bunch of blogs or like articles on the internet and then make programs based off of what I learned from there.
Yeah. So one of the things that I do, and this is like maybe not completely beginner stuff, but it's stuff that I use to stay current with things that I'm not an expert on. So I subscribe to Patrick Wardle's Patreon, but I literally pay $1 because like I don't I don't have a lot to be like giving out, but I still want to support him. And also he's an excellent macOS researcher who has a really great talent for explaining how these super complicated, like high level attacks work. He's like an ex-NSA guy. And his talent is really like, for one, just being like a super chill and nice dude and being very easy to learn from. And two, like putting out these amazing write-ups that make these like, you know, news articles make sense from a technical level, where you can read through and he like points at everything and explains what it does. And like, you want to be up on macOS security, like reading the emails he puts out and like the blog posts he does is probably my go-to for knowing more about macOS security. On the other end of that, sometimes I'll just be like on an airplane and be like, I'm going to read a research paper by Matthew Van Hoff. And like, they're like, if you just look at them, you're like, oh my God, this is so much text. But when you start reading them, they're friendly and they're like, you know, described very, very, in like a beginner friendly way that makes all the networking stuff like not so difficult to understand. So some of these papers have really got me to understand the fundamental Wi-Fi attacks that I've later based some of my tools on. So being able to like, you know, like read a research paper by an author who's like really beginner friendly is kind of the easiest way that I've been able to get close to like cutting edge stuff that maybe like other people like don't totally feel comfortable reading yet. Some of it is absolutely dry and hard to read. But if you find a good author like Matthew Van Hoff or Patrick Wardle, I think you'll find that also staying up on the bleeding edge, like technical stuff is like not as hard as I used to think it was. Also, Dead Skull says Red Team Field Manual is good. I've actually heard really good feedback about this as well. Red teaming, pen testing, like it's all about like a mindset and like thinking about like how to like go through and solve a problem or accomplish like a kind of a checklist of things that you need to make sure get done. You know, and I think that it's cool that there are some books that try to teach you that and like get you in the mindset rather than just like having you, I don't know, like just like have a bunch of tools that you learn and not really understand how to deploy them. So No Starch Press also has great stuff. So there's absolutely some good publishers out there. Cool. So I'm going to say that like James is probably right here in that there are so many good YouTube tutorials that like sometimes reading a book is not as engaging as being able to just like pick up concept by like watching a tutorial. But I will say that a book is definitely going to frame things a lot better in some cases and may be a more cohesive picture into what you're trying to learn rather than like a little bite that might give you something that feels good, but doesn't actually like help you contextualize anything or like get any closer to your overall goal of understanding how this industry works. All right, we've got another question for you, Angelina. How did you learn to program?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was ages ago. I first was introduced to programming when I was about 7 or so. I took like a basic programming class at my school, and I was just like fascinated by the world, and I just by the entire like field of like computer science and other people. It was like an integrated class, so there were like students who were a lot older than me in that class, and I would just look at what they were building through code, and I was just like, that's really cool. I want to learn how to do it myself. So from there, after that class, I just pretty much taught myself programming languages using like the online resources we mentioned earlier, blogs, articles, YouTube tutorials, and then I think when you're learning a programming language, the best way to really consolidate the topics in your brain is to either do program development or solve algorithms online. So I think solving like either elite code problems, like things that really make you think about a problem and then break it down and then solve that problem, is really good, not just for like learning programming languages, but learning the paradigm behind problem solving, which is imbued throughout like every single programming language you learn. And also developing projects is useful too, because you get something tangible out of it, which is really satisfying. And you're also like consolidating the topics of each programming language in your brain, because every programming language is different. There's different topics you have to explore. So building a different program that tailors towards each language and its models is really useful in my opinion.
Here's a really interesting question. Does aerospace have a dominant hacking language? Like, is there something like Python or something else that's more common in aerospace than you might expect?
Yeah, it's hard to say because it isn't it's very niche, and there hasn't been a lot of applications developed yet. But from what I've seen, an overwhelming amount have either used C, Go, or Python. Mostly Python, because especially like the astronomy ones and the computational ones, they usually use Python because they want to make it as easy and useful for beginners as much as possible, which was surprising to me. I thought it was going to be more like low-level stuff like C, but Python seems to be pretty popular.
Yeah, I would say also what you were saying about being able to try something out by writing a program. I found that to be the easiest way to get validation. Like, I really know very little Python, and like I went back to community college to learn it. But I was able to, so I always like showing this off, like when we talk about this sort of thing. Like, I wrote a little program called LaoScent, which I did a lot of business intelligence stuff, and I was always interested in the way that the city would offer up data in the form of an API, and you didn't even need an API key in order to access this data most of the time. So as an OSINT researcher, if I wanted to know about a business, I could type in like their address or their business name, and I could learn about like their liquor license, their address, like the owner, like all this information, like violations, like all this cool stuff. So I wrote a little tool that just took the information, and it got like, I just mentioned it on Nullbyte, I think, as like a way of like practicing programming, and like everyone took it like real seriously. Like, it got like featured in like a bunch of like tool updates where they're like, this is the hot new OSINT tool of the week, and like, sure, like it is interesting. At the time, actually, I had just finished working for Uber Eats, and they had assigned me a project where they were like, okay, it's super hard for us to find like certain businesses actual owners, because they don't list it on the website, and none of our people can figure out how to get in touch with them. So I use tools like this to kind of like do business intelligence and like get a better result for like this bigger company who wanted to reach out to these smaller businesses. But there's lots of different reasons why you might want to do this. I found it kind of interesting also that it ended up being featured in the OSINT framework, which is currently down. I don't know why, but I always recommend the OSINT framework. It's kind of funny that it got taken down now, because a lot of people rely on it. But yeah, so this dumb little project I did ended up getting like a good amount of attention, even though it was just a simple plugin for an API. So if you're just getting started with programming, like sometimes just making a simple little project and releasing it ends up being a lot more beneficial to the people around you than you think, because maybe not everybody has time to go into the weeds of like LA's open data system and pick out the APIs that are the most useful. And that kind of, it wasn't my Python skill. It was me taking a second to try to improve things with the skills I was learning that really made the difference here. So I appreciate that you suggested that, because that's how I learn, is like, if I don't make something with the language, I never really know it, because I don't come up against the limitations by trying to do something ambitious. And that's really what I need for a programming language, to push myself to learn, more, or like have a deeper understanding of it.
Yeah, definitely. And also, like, building projects is a great way to spearhead your influence in the community as well. Just by like sharing a project, you can get in contact with so many other people, like you mentioned. So it's a great way to get in touch with a lot of other great minds. And if you make it open source, then other people can contribute to your project and make it even better.
So here's a question. Have you ever heard of a programming language called Zig?
I haven't yet. I'm assuming it's like an ESOLang because it doesn't seem to be too popular, but I'll be interested to learn more about it.
Yeah, apparently it's the fastest language that nobody uses. So if nobody uses it, that's probably why you've never heard of it. All right, so here's another question. A lot of the spotlight seems to be on red teaming more than blue teaming. What team do you recommend to start with?
Okay. For me personally, I actually started off with the blue team. I don't know if it's just me, but like I don't like breaking stuff. I like amending stuff, which is like I guess counterintuitive when you think of hacker. But yeah, like especially with the aerospace hacking stuff, there's like a lot of, it's mostly defensive from my perspective, or it's like a lot. The barrier to entry is much less steeper if you want to get into the field. If you start off blue teaming, the way I started was I just built like a lot of like reconnaissance and like more defensive type open source tools, like the satellite one I did and the drone reverse engineering research, which was more focused on the defensive side of things. Yeah, but that's how I started. I'm curious, Kody, how about you? How did you start off?
So I find blue teaming to be much harder than red teaming because it requires you to be a builder and not a destroyer. Like I can take a casual interest in Wi-Fi and figure out how to mess it up pretty badly. And I don't need to know anything about networking, which is pretty amazing, right? Like you can be a red teamer that uses pre-built tools to go through a checklist and, you know, knocks on like all these doors, and you can get started with red teaming and it's not a big deal. Like, you know, like that's kind of expected. You're not going to be an expert in everything and you're not going to be a defender. Defenders have to know like what things are supposed to be like. They need to know how to do remediation for the most part. Like they need to be able to like detect and like know when something's working in a wrong way. And they have to know about all the same attack techniques. They might not need to know how to execute them themselves, but they sure need to know that they exist and what the impact is and what it looks like. So like in my mind, like blue teaming requires like twice as much knowledge in some cases, because like you have to know the attacks, you have to know the defense, and you have to know the remediation and like what to do when you're under attack. Attackers are just like, you know, you do your thing. And if you get stopped, then you just start another attack avenue. Like you can be a clever attacker. And in fact, like I believe like ex-blue teamers make far better red teamers because their knowledge of how the defenses work and how a defender's mindset works is really so much more valuable than someone who's just taken a knock at the infrastructure and doesn't really think about the people who are sitting on the other side. So I'm just going to say, in my opinion, and this is just an opinion, blue teaming is so much harder and requires more knowledge and more dedication because, like Angelina said, it's not just toppling things over, it's not breaking things, it's building or fixing things. And that is, you need to know how to do it and how the technologies work together. And that is just like, you know, IT, networking, like dealing with like the kind of stuff that is necessary with like cloud stuff now, where you have to like connect all these accounts and get into Azure and all this other stuff. Like it just seems so much harder to me. But yeah, I would say that like ex-blue teamers become amazing red teamers because they know all the tricks and they know how defenders think. Not all red teamers know how defenders think. And sometimes it doesn't matter because there either aren't any defenders or, you know, they're not very good at what they do. But I have always found blue teaming to be like much more difficult. And that's just my opinion. So I would say if you're just a beginner, learning about blue teaming is going to give you a better advantage. So if you're a more disciplined person and you're willing to learn the infrastructure, how it works and how to defend it, you are going to be an amazing red teamer. And you can kind of go over to that side whenever you want. Whereas if you just go with offensive stuff, it's going to be harder for you to transition into like a blue team role because like, you know how to knock things down, but you're going to have a lot to learn when it comes to how to fix and remediate things. Again, just my opinion. Some other people's life experience is probably very different from that, but it's crazy to me how much a blue team has to do as opposed to a red team. Any advantage they can get is really like worth it because attackers can come from anywhere and defenders have a fixed position they have to defend. It's very difficult to both provide services and be able to keep things up and running and also be able to be as agile as an attacker can be. Whew. All right, there are claims that this Zig is faster than Rust. Okay, so Zig is apparently a general purpose programming language and toolchain for maintaining robust, optimal, and reusable software. Okay, all right. I guess we'll find out more about Zig in the future. All right, a question. Is it even worth it to attempt a manual kernel upgrade for Windows 10? What? Especially in reverse engineering, fileless malware. I don't know. We're talking about aerospace hacking, but that is a good question. I will try to bring on someone who does know, but I'm not a reverse engineer, and I believe Angelina is not either, so probably can't contribute to that. So there's a little bit of a discussion about why Python is so popular. Like James is pointing out that like you would want C or something that's very efficient if you're operating with limited resources and like, you know, you only have so much memory or so much space to run on. But some other people are mentioning that Python has a lot of astronomy libraries, and there's a lot of people who are in like data science and like, you know, like come from like the sciences, as it were, who are not explicitly programmers, who still have like major contributions that they want to, you know, do to astronomy. And these Python libraries make it very easy for them to participate in a scientific way.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of researchers, like as you mentioned, that are very acclimated to using programming languages in their daily lives, that want to also extract like the benefits out of those tools. So Python makes it really simple and intuitive for those scientists and researchers to get access to like valuable information and mathematical computations. Yeah, and like adding on top of that, like I'm currently doing like research for NASA right now, conducting research on the composition of meteorites, and like half the people in my team are like programming dinosaurs in a way. Like they don't really like they have a lot of great like high level understanding of how like meteor composition works, but they don't really know how to build stuff and like work with computers. So Python, I would say, is the easiest, one of the easiest languages to get access to like all the benefits of a program, while not having like a lot of experiences with programs or coding in general.
Yeah, and that's exactly the niche of like Jupyter Notebook and stuff like that too. Is like it's for people who want to do like simulations and like other sorts of interesting things with Python in a notebook that can be shared with other scientists in a way where you can just put in your own data, run the same calculations, and the same thing should work. So I used to use Jupyter Notebooks for data science by doing war driving stuff. So I would like go war driving, I would take the CSV file and I would put it into a Jupyter Notebook with certain formulas, and it would like, you know, geolocate stuff for me and put it on a map and do all this cool stuff. And then I just made that Jupyter Notebook available for anybody else. So you could take your own war driving data, put it in the Jupyter Notebook and manipulate it in the same way and see like device manufacturers and blah, blah, blah. And like, it was really cool. Like I was able to make it so I could filter in information, find vulnerable networks like really easily. So that's kind of the benefit of why Python is so popular in these sorts of data science fields, and, you know, including astronomy. Like it's really easy to take a formula that makes raw data useful and then share that with a bunch of other people who might not be programmers. I used R and Python for data science. R like Rust, or R another unknown programming language that I also don't know? Angelina, you would probably know better than me.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about R before. I've known some researchers that have used it. It's more like, from what I heard, it's like a more like a data science focused language. But I haven't experimented too much with it myself.
All right, so I think we're coming. Of course, more people jump in the stream right as I'm about to announce that we're slowly winding it down. All right, so we're just about at the end of our stream. We have time for probably a couple more questions. Also James is shouting at the Pandas library for working with data. Yes, if you are just getting started with data science, Python Pandas is amazing. I find myself having to use it all the time. And it is a great resource for getting started with data science. Let's see. So one thing I wanted to shout out per always, I see that there's people actively continuing the discussion on the Discord server. So if you haven't checked it out already, we made a Discord server. You can join it by going to, I'll type it, nuggets.lol. And a lot of the time, if you don't have time to ask a question, if you want to have someone in our community take a whack at answering it too, or if you want to keep up with the stuff we're going to be talking about this week, like the story that James dropped in about how hackers were able to spoof verified messages in order to do some pretty sneaky phishing, then you should definitely join and check it out. There is also a spot specifically for talking about the live Q&A questions. So if you have a question that has not been answered, drop it here, where we've answered, I believe, all of these questions so far, including the very interesting Yagi smartphone distance question by James, which some other people jumped in as well. But we did a stream on this, and it was pretty cool. So, all right, I think that's all the time. Tell me the best resources for hacking. Go to check out Nullbyte. There you go. Link is not working. Nugget.lol. This is working, you guys. Connection is not secure. Of course. Continue to site. see if it works. Oh my gosh, maybe you're right. Maybe it's not working. Okay, well, if it's not working, I'll just generate another link. That's funny though. Thank you for pointing that out. Ow, it was just working last week. Oh no, wait, it is working. It redirected. It's you, it's not me. Okay, cool. All right, so Angelina, thank you for being on the stream again. And is there anything that people should look out for in the next couple of weeks, if they want to follow you, that is?
Yeah, so I have this new site now you can check out that uses my alias at g4lxy.space. I'll be posting pretty much all my projects and articles there if you want to keep in touch or be updated by all my aerospace cybersecurity projects. Currently, I'm still finishing up the drone forensics platform I'm building. Turns out it's a lot more complicated than I initially thought it would be, but it's almost done. Yeah, and also I'll keep adding more tools to this aerospace resource hub as well. And I encourage you guys, if you guys have any tools in mind that you want to add or you've heard of in the past, I would encourage you guys to contribute to the GitHub.
This is super cool. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing this. And of course, if you're in SoCal, make sure to check out the class Angelina is doing coming up soon. We'll try to get a stream of that happening as well. So if you're not able to attend in person, then we'll try to make an online version available in the next month or so. Thank you to everybody who's on the stream today. Lots of excellent questions. And we'll have Angelina back again soon, I am sure. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you on Friday for our news Q&A stream. And of course, as we have to do every week, big shout out to Veronis for letting us do the stream, letting us have letting us have Angelina on. Yes, make sure to go to veronis.com/Kody. That's Kody. If you want to show your support, they do check to make sure that people are clicking on that link, and it helps us produce the stream and get to go live with you every week. So, yep, thank you, everyone. We'll see you on Friday, and have a good one.